I decided to use the second shortest verse in the New Testament, well, probably the entire Bible, because in this crash course, if I can get you to accept that command as it relates to the day of the rapture, then your rapture experience could be dramatically better than what it's going to be unless you change your mind. I had to change my mind. Many of you who come here are going to need to change your mind. First, I got to be able to prove to you that you need to. And I'm absolutely going to do that. But you need to understand, we are not getting the truth from them. The church is not telling us the truth. And that's hard to believe and accept. Stan, are you saying that all these pastors have got it wrong? Are you saying that, Stan, and you got it right? Saying a couple things. First of all, you have an example of this. It's called the Catholic Church. They all got a whole bunch of stuff wrong. They got people praying to dead people, okay? That's pretty amazing. And that goes on all over the world every single day. You look at the Protestant church, it's practically a joke in and of itself. Rarely can you find a church that believes in the inerrancy of the word. If you're telling me we're so much better than the Catholic Church that could never happen to us, you need to think again. It is happening. I'm going to show you an example of that here in just a second. But this is the other channel. I've had the regular channel for a little over 5 years. Something's coming in September, and I want you to be aware of it. I think it's a blessing to the church. It's not crucial that you have to embrace what is coming and what is going to happen in September, but you would be missing a blessing if you don't, I think. What I'm going to show you over the next few weeks, it may go into a couple of months, but I want it done before September. What you're going to hear on this channel is crucial. Much of it is crucial. We're going to get to the crucial part right away, but I want you to come to grips with something. They're not telling us the truth. I can prove that scripturally, and I will in the coming episodes of this crash course. But it's shocking when you finally realize they've misled me my entire Christian life. Now, I'm going to show you how good, decent people like John MacArthur was. Now, I'm not going to go into the long story, but I happen to know for a fact he was a man of high integrity. He was not one of these pastors who was one thing on Sunday, and then for the rest of the week, he was a totally different kind of guy. That's not John MacArthur. Disagree with him, and I do theologically on many things, especially prophecy. Man of high integrity. But even men and women of high integrity, when it comes to prophecy, for some reason, maybe because it's been institutionalized and it's just part of who we are, they feel that it's okay to be a sneaky, underhanded fox and leave out important truths for us. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. This is not an example of the proof that they're all wrong. It's an example of what they're capable of in giving us what they believe about prophecy. Because remember, this ultimately is going to get down to is when the Lord speaks about his coming in the Olivet Discourse and in Luke 17, starting in verse 22, is he talking about the rapture of the church, or is he talking about that event where he comes after the beast / Antichrist comes with the false prophet and all of that and the trumpets and all of that, when he comes and he throws the beast and the false prophet into the lake of fire chains Satan, and gets us ready for the millennial kingdom. Is his coming that is discussed in the Olivet Discourse that event which they call the second coming, or is it the rapture? They don't call the rapture a coming. It is, though. But they don't call it that. So I'm going to use their vernacular so it doesn't confuse you. That's what it's going to come down to, because I'm going to tell you, oh, it most certainly is the rapture of the church. And it is imminent. And it is coming. But I want to give you an example of what they're capable of, just so you know what you're up against. A good, decent man like John MacArthur in the MacArthur Study Bible, when talking about in Matthew 24, when the Lord says, you see the temple and all the buildings, they're coming down, and there will not be one stone on top of another. Here's his note on that in the MacArthur Study Bible, verbatim. These words were literally fulfilled in AD 70. Titus, the Roman general, built large wooden scaffolds around the walls of the temple buildings, piled them high with wood and other flammable items, and set them ablaze. The heat from the fires was so intense that the stones crumbled. The rubble was then sifted to retrieve the melted gold, and the remaining ruins were thrown down into the Kidron Valley. For most people, they now have a vision of what happened on that day. The problem with it is he's leaving some important facts out. Not because he's running out of time or doesn't have the space, that he was just kind of cutting it short. He doesn't want you to hear the truth. Now, because I read the entire works of Josephus, who was a priest in the temple, he's known as the great historian because his writings about the siege of Jerusalem are considered the absolute best. And I can tell that John MacArthur read Josephus. Of course he did. He was a doctor of theology. He was highly trained. He was as close a rare thing as you'll ever find of being a scholar and a pastor. Most pastors are not scholars. Highly educated, yes. Scholars, no. He fit both roles. Of course he read the complete works of Josephus, and this proves it. But what he left out is that on that day, the day that the Romans finally broke through the walls, the exterior walls surrounding Jerusalem, ready to send in their army and put down the rebellion, Titus held his men back, goes to the front of the wall, and yells up to them. And he says, look, we've breached the wall. We're coming in. Go tell John, he is speaking of John of Gischala, who was in the temple, who had taken up residence in the temple, he and his men. He said, go tell John that I pledge my right hand. That was the sacred oath that the Romans, if they pledged it, they needed to do it. They are honor bound to back it up. Go tell John, I will hold my men back if he will come out of the temple with his men and relocate somewhere else in the city, garrison somewhere else. That way, the temple will not be destroyed. They sent that message to John. The men came back to the wall and told the general. John said, come and get him. Still, Titus did not send the men in. He held them back. And that night he met with his closest advisors to figure out a way to get John out of the temple without destroying the temple. And his advisors told him, it's a fortress. It's a second fortress. We've been here months to get through the wall. It'll be months before we get through the temple. The only choice you have, General, is to set it on fire, or we're here for another very long season. Left that out. Why didn't he tell you that General Titus did everything he could to save that building? I'll tell you exactly why. Because later when he comes to the point where Jesus talks about the abomination of desolation, he doesn't want you to know about John of Gischala. He never mentions that man's name. And more than likely, no pastor you've ever listened to told you about him, because he committed the abomination of desolation they don't want you to hear about. Whether it was Solomon's temple or the second temple that Jesus called his Father's house, nobody ever did what John of Gischala did in that second temple. It dwarfs what Antiochus Epiphanes did many years earlier, and we don't know about this sociopath who got the temple destroyed? What's going on? Think about all of the times pastors and prophecy teachers could have told you about this man, but they didn't, because they didn't want you to have that truth so that they could get you to believe what they want you to believe, which is when the Lord talks about the abomination of desolation, he wasn't talking about the temple Jesus was standing in front of. Well, he was on the Olivet Discourse a few blocks away, up a little higher, looking down at the temple. When he talks about the abomination of desolation, he's talking about a third temple that will be built someday, and the beast, the Antichrist, will be the one that commits the abomination of desolation. That's what they want. That way they can also then take the teaching about his coming and stick it at the end. That's why he didn't tell you about him. It was sneaky and underhanded. In Luke, he makes another note. He mentions that Titus cut off the food supply to Israel when he showed up with his father, Vespasian. They were there a long time. Vespasian ended up going back to Rome and becoming Caesar. And that Titus cut off the food and people starved inside the city because he cut off the food. Well, he left something out again. And I wanted to show you so you can believe me. I Googled it just before I started this. So Gemini, their AI, jumped in. I Googled, did John of Gischala burn up all of the extra wheat? They had a tremendous storehouse of food inside that city. Did John of Gischala burn up all the grain? Here was the AI's answer. Yes, during the infighting prior to the Roman siege, rival Jewish factions, including the forces of John of Gischala and Simon Bar Giora, deliberately burned the city's grain stores. That's why they starved. Some infighting between the main rebel leader, John of Gischala, and a secondary guy that really Josephus doesn't have much to say about. It was John of Gischala. The reason they were starving in that city is because John of Gischala set fire to an enormous amount of food that they could have been eating. Again, MacArthur leaves that out because he does not want that man's name on the table, because you're going to start seeing some things. And again, that's not proof that the Lord's instructions and directions and explanation of his coming in the Olivet Discourse is the rapture, but it shows you, I hope, what you're up against. They're all in on this. Satan has created a massive delusion, and you need to fight your way through it, because quite honestly, this may be your last chance. And don't just do it for yourself, do it for your family, because if you do not get the truth over the next few weeks, actually, I'm going to bring the really crucial stuff in just a couple of days. More on that in just a second. But unless you get the truth, your family and circle of Christian friends are never going to get it, because they're going to run into a John MacArthur after another John MacArthur after another John MacArthur who is not telling them the truth. Now, I know John MacArthur has passed away, but there are a lot of living pastors who could be telling us the truth, and they won't do it. There is something seriously decaying inside the church leadership, and this is the wrong time to be betting your and your family's future on what they are teaching. This is Monday, June 15th. Let's say Thursday, June 19th, 16th, 17th, 18th, sorry. June 18th, Thursday. We're going to go to ground zero. I'm going to show you up front that they're not telling us the truth, that the Lord's discussion about his coming in the Olivet Discourse in Luke 17 is the rapture, and it is imminent. I want you to know that, because there's a potential kill switch that the Lord has at his disposal when he says he will cut those days short. I'm not even sure we're going to make it to September. So I want to get the crucial stuff out early. I think we will make it to September, but I'm not sure. So I'm getting the crucial stuff out. And then you can make a decision, because there's no doubt I can show you the truth. What's in doubt is whether or not you can accept it, because there's this sick little go-to thing that Christians of this generation do, which is this: even after I show them the truth, well, Stan, you say one thing, they say another. Hey, it's all going to work out. We're not destined for wrath. I'm saved. I'm going in the rapture. Sounds great, but it's the exact opposite of what the Lord said. You could only say that if you didn't know what the Lord said, or you did know what the Lord said, but you push it away from you. It's called rightly dividing, and it can get you and your family left behind. Learn the truth this coming Thursday. We'll see you then, I hope.